What up, party people? We back with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic. And within this ancient, timeless wisdom tradition of Advaita Vedanta, I often reflect on this concept of depth over breadth. We recorded a recent Yoga For Your Intellect episode. That's the conversational, longer form episodes within this philosophy that I do with Joseph Emtt, who's been a teacher of Vedanta for 30 years. He went to the ashram when he was 19, left university, and he was looking all over the world for different places to go experience what these timeless traditions were pointing towards. There's monasteries in Greece, different temples for Buddhism, to he was traveling throughout even the U.S., and he wanted to go beyond the classroom that he was studying at Washington University and in St. Louis and go deep into experiencing what these philosophies were talking about. So long story short, he ends up finding Swami, our teacher, Swami Parthasarathi, and he was probably, 30 years ago, so he must have been about 70. And in his 30-year journey with this philosophy, we met about 10 years ago here in Malibu and at Calamigos Ranch. Shout out Calamigos Ranch for having a philosophical resource on staff like Joseph. And one of the episodes that we just started recording our weekly conversations that he and I have had for the last decade around this philosophy. And in one of our recent episodes, we talked about this topic of depth over breadth. This is very different in this systematic approach to philosophy within Vedanta than it might be in an academic approach to philosophy within a university structure, for example, where it is to go wide, go super wide. And if you're going to contribute, if you're going to study philosophy, if you go to grad school for philosophy, if you're going to get a postgraduate degree in philosophy, you have to introduce something new. And that is so different from the Vedantic approach to philosophy, the Eastern approach to philosophy, which is just find out what the sages, the lighthouses throughout history have already said. It's not discovering something new. It's discovering the timeless, what has always been. It's not a construction of words or ideas in a new and novel way. It has nothing to do with words. We recently did an episode on the fact that the truth, in the Eastern sense, philosophically, is not in words. It's not about your contribution. It is about your reconciliation, your discovery, your clarity with these paradoxical observations, principles, concepts that sages throughout nearly every major tradition have been saying over and over and over again. The Rig Veda says it well, going back 5,000 plus years of the truth is one, sages call it by many names. All of these major traditions, the things that they're pointing to, that seem so paradoxical. Christ saying, turn the other cheek. How is that a good strategy? The Buddha saying that suffering is caused by desire. How is that the case? Vedanta saying all agitation comes from selfishness. How can an external agitation, someone trying to sabotage me at work, how is that agitation caused by selfishness? All of these seemingly paradoxical premises and principles within these philosophies, they all stay as paradoxes, as perhaps something that people keep talking about hundreds of years, thousands of years later, but they're just stories. They don't make it into our approach to life unless there is reflection. And reflection is a function of depth over breadth. A reflection on hearing the same thing and reflecting on it day after day, week after week, perhaps month or year after year, to try to understand the truth within it versus, oh, that's interesting. So-and-so said that. Now let me see what this other thinker said, and this other thinker, and this other thinker. Let me go from Hegel to Kant to Kierkegaard. Let me try to understand all of these different historical aspects, which is more like journalism. It is more kind of theoretical than the applied sciences, so to speak. It is memorization, recitation, instead of discovery or transformation. It is scholarship. It is not a shift, an evolution. It's not progress towards the higher. Rick Rubin, the famed producer, produced for Johnny Cash to Red Hot Chili Peppers, and just like every who's who within music. He said in an interview once, he said, I don't read anything that isn't over 1,000 years old these days. And this is what Joseph and I talked about in our conversation. Out with the new and in with the old. Out with the new and in with the old. Instead of finding out a new way that a modern thinker has put a spin on an age-old idea, why not just reflect on the age-old idea? And if an idea has lasted more than 1,000 years, then it's lasted longer than any empire, any business, any invention ever has. If an idea has lasted 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years, it has lasted than any human empire. It's lasted longer than any really, really important, hip, cool company or product right now. It might have more truth to it than the iPhone that you are listening to this podcast on. It most likely does if it's been around for 5,000 years. He said, I don't read anything that isn't over 1,000 years right now in my life. Out with the new and in with the old. What's so beautiful about that? Totally sent me for a headspin when I first heard him say that. And then I was like, God, what a G to not only have that perspective, but to just drop that. God, he has so many of these sound bites too that are just like, I would have never thought a human would ever say something like that. And yet you hear it and you're like, why haven't 100 other smart people said the exact same thing? And when he said that, I was like, God, that is such a great way to highlight depth over breadth. Understand a timeless concept, and it could be a foothold to anything you want professionally, personally, in your entire life. It's so damn valuable to really understand a framework. And you don't get that from this book said this in 2023. This great book says this in 2024. This thing from 1988 was really great. This course, this philosophy has this principle. This other philosophy, this other eclectic approach has this other principle. These can be really great in the beginning of our approaches and pursuits of truth. To know the terrain, to know the different ideas out there, it can be phenomenal. Just if for nothing else to say, wow, there's a lot of coherence between these different traditions, or wow, there's a lot that doesn't make sense in these others. When it starts to click for you in a philosophy that does speak to you. And Vedanta explicitly says there are as many paths to the divine as there are people on earth. 1 in 10,000 might be attracted to a Vedantic approach to the pursuit of truth. This is not a philosophy of conversion trying to tell everybody that they should get onto the Vedantic path. This philosophy is basically saying, yeah, 1 in 10,000 will be interested. When I wound down my startup podcast to turn it into a podcast, after 2 years, I was like, you know what? I talk about startups all day, every day. I want to talk about the thing that I actually want to talk about, this philosophy. And didn't bother me at all when the listenership was 7, 10, 12 people. It is a chance for me to go deeper with these concepts, to reflect on them with the 7 of you, the 15 of you. I have no idea what the numbers are. I've never looked at the stats on this podcast. Whatever the numbers are, it's so great to have met the people that I got to meet through this, to build the community that we have in Venice of about 30 of us that meet each month. But more than even the community, the chance to go deep with these concepts. And these episodes and the newsletters, the conversations that I get to have with Joseph on Yoga for Your Intellect. It gives so much more resonance to this concept of depth over breadth, because there will be something that was once novel to me, sounded good. Maybe it became something I said in a dinner conversation a week later within this philosophy. But then when I heard it the 100th time, reflected on it for the 100th time, it's like I was seeing it for the first. Some of these things reflected on 1,000 times. And each time it provides more depth. One of my favorite principles within this philosophy of attach is attach you lose, detach you gain. When I first heard that, it stopped me in my tracks. A decade plus later, and I am still blown away by how practical, helpful, applicable that timeless principle is. Attach you lose, detach you gain. Whether it's people, whether it's professional pursuits, status, validation, happiness, avoiding suffering. That one principle applies to them all. And the 1,000th time that I reflect on it, it's like, wow, now I know how to wield that sword that much better. Apply it to my life that much more effortlessly. And that's just one of the principles. Depth over breadth allows for a mastery of a subject, yes. It's like, would Tom Brady have been Tom Brady with 7 Super Bowls if he had tried to play football, baseball, basketball, and run track and field all at the same time? I was about to say probably not, but I'm going to go ahead and say no. He would not have been a master at that craft if he was diluting his efforts across 5. And that's the same for our philosophical approach to life. We will dilute our progress, our efforts, which whatever path, by the way, you might have a path that is not Vedantic at all. It's completely antithetical to a path of Vedanta as a path of studying, listening, reflecting on the words of the masters. There are other phenomenal paths of devotion, of service and action that prioritize, let's say, service. Vedanta certainly makes ample use of karma yogas, the spiritual pursuit of service. Karma yoga is certainly part of the path of Vedanta, but it's not the priority. The priority is study and reflection of the words of the masters. A devotional path. In Sanskrit, you'd call that bhakti. The bhakti yoga path, the pursuit of the divine, the eternal, the timeless, through devotion. Devotion to a practice, devotion to a teacher. That's certainly part of this philosophy, but it is not the priority. The priority is study and reflection. Simply study and reflection the words of the masters. And then the words of the masters will include things like, don't forget, service, usefulness to your community. The words of the masters will include, don't forget to also have a devotional aspect to your spiritual pursuit. So it'll incorporate the others. But there are certainly paths, like a conventional Christian path is a priority of devotion towards Christ, and not so much studying and reflecting on the words of the masters, but it is to devote your life to Christ. That might include studying some of the words. That might include listening to a sermon once a week. But it is also clearly a devotional approach to the teacher that is Christ and to the community, the church, your community. And whether it is that approach to the divine, whether it is an approach to your professional pursuit, the mastery of a craft, and more importantly, a mastery of oneself, this philosophy and pretty much every athletic coach around the world would say, mastery comes from depth, not breadth. There is value in breadth, but mastery of a craft and mastery of oneself does not come from breadth. Take the breadth towards the depth, but ultimately depth. Systematic approach to playing quarterback or to realizing one's true nature. Depth, according to this philosophy, is the path to truth. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.